Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the March Group Triangles webinar. None of us needs reminding that we now meet up during a particularly challenging and unsettling time of conflicts and destruction. But we can rest assured that the light we invoke for our triangles and the global planetary network is helping to awaken and illumine receptive minds and hearts. Our triangles and the network itself act as a communication system into the outer world. And with channels like these, the spirit is empowered to influence human affairs. Such a simple service has therefore a planetary impact on humanity. So nowadays, the idea of consciousness as a field of meaning and of reality is understood by many, and this makes it easier to speak about the triangles work. A useful practice when introducing someone to the service of triangles is to point out that triangular patterns are both universal and basic to nature. A trinity lies at the heart of every living form, and of course, 3 people constitute the smallest group. Each member of a triangle identifies with this life-affirming pattern, echoed in the light, love, and purpose of the great invocation to guide human wills. Every triangle formed strengthens the network and increases the distribution of light and goodwill worldwide. So the light we invoke and circulate also serves as a spotlight, revealing the distortions of truth being relayed and the twisted propaganda which disturbs humanity's conventional thought patterns. It does have a positive effect in making us question and think about the value of truth, of striving to express it, and the consequences of not doing so. And all of this can be used to a positive end, as it calls us to stand in the soul's light and to develop self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. It's a process which requires us to step back and see through the clear eye of the observing soul. So let's now take a moment and say together the 5 o'clock mantra, focusing on all who love and serve humanity. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May I fulfill my part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Mantras like this have a powerful effect as they are initiated from divine sources, and sounding them integrates heart and mind. We find a further example of this quoted in a speech given by Abraham Lincoln, who, as we know, was an astute observer of humanity. And this is what he had to say. An Eastern monarch charged his wise men to invent a sentence to be ever in view, one which should be true and appropriate at all times and situations. And they presented him with the words, "And this too shall pass away." It's a phrase which puts things back into perspective. And Lincoln was said to frequently use this aphorism with friends and co-workers. It became a mantra in his daily life. So we too can find helpful mantras to use in our efforts to serve and to live more disciplined and principled lives. And there's another wonderful instruction in the Alice Bailey books given to a disciple. You need to learn the lesson that it is relatively of no importance what you do. That which is of major importance is to register consciously all the time just exactly what you are doing. This quotation has great relevance to our short daily triangle service. When we register consciously what we're doing in vitalizing our triangle and linking it to the planetary network, we succeed in providing a focused and dynamic service. We then become sensitive above all to the qualities of energies which are seeking expression through us. Eventually, the aim is to bring this difficult task to realization by learning to hold the mind steady in the light and as much as possible during the day. And this question can be asked: of what value is a day of busy distractions when the ceaseless activity of the mind stuff tosses like a cork afloat the ocean? It results in limiting awareness of the soul, as well as our spiritual development and service. One sure thing that can be said about spiritual service, and that is that its solutions are simple. Love more, awaken the will. Simple, yes, but the application is challenging. So returning to our troubled times and the continued sharing of bad news on media channels, many people find inspiration by stepping outside and looking up to the heavens. The energy from the stars in the sky seem to interact with us. Knowing that the planets continue to revolve in their orbits around the sun is a reassuring rhythmic order. The act of looking into the night sky has the effect of putting things into perspective and uplifting us, even though some find it somewhat disturbing or a self-diminishing experience to the personality. It is a reality, however, that energies from stars and constellations in the sky have an enormous influence on our consciousness. And this relates well to the topic of our speaker this evening, Carly Way, who will be touching on the subject of triangles in terms of soul-centered astrology and its usefulness in our everyday lives. But before this, let us move on now to our reflection and visualization on the Great Invocation. Lincoln thought as a soul, as a point of love and light, with all those throughout the world who are part of the Triangle's service work. Visualize the world situation as best you can and see people everywhere glowing with a dim light, and here and there points of brighter light where men and women of spiritual intention and of loving hearts are working for their fellow human beings. Then visualize through the creative imagination the vivid light of the spiritual kingdom streaming towards humanity and slowly merging with the light which is already in humanity. Say the first stanza of the adapted gratification. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. Ponder upon the reappearance of the coming world teacher. Realize that no matter by what name he may be called in the many world religions, he is still the same great identity. Reflect and speculate on the possible results of his appearance. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. Endeavor to concentrate your fixed intention to serve and spread love in your surroundings, and realize that insofar as you can do these things, you're attempting to blend your personal will with the divine will. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. We sound the sacred word once, dedicating the threefold personality to the working out of the divine plan. I now have great pleasure in asking Carly Way to share some thoughts with us on the theme, the triangle, a transformational pattern of relationships. Carly, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. From the earliest skywatchers to today, the urge to ascribe meaning to patterns in the sky has endured. Yet the meanings that are derived depend upon the language that is spoken. When we consider the language of traditional astrology, for example, it usually starts with the sign, its temperament, and psychological portrait. This sign-first approach can be insightful, but it is one-dimensional in its view of the signs as fixed categories rather than as conduits of energies and relationships. Esoteric astrology offers a different entry point, suggesting that the chart is not a static portrait, but a geometry of relationships, a living interplay of forces that condition consciousness and guide its unfolding. Esoteric astrology invites us to look at patterns, specifically the interaction of triangles. Much more than a geometric figure, it is a pattern of relationship. 2 points create polarity, push and pull, yes and no. Add a third point and everything changes. Movement enters, tension becomes creative, polarity finds synthesis. A triangle transforms conflict into flow. Triangles repeatedly appear throughout esoteric teachings as they symbolize the interplay of forces through which growth happens. how energies interact, tensions can be reconciled, and purpose can emerge from apparent contradiction. Triangles remind us that evolution is not linear but relational, unfolding through the synthesis of energies that once appeared separative, opposed, polarized. In our triangle service work, we consciously participate in this geometry by linking in thought with two others, forming a living triangle of light and goodwill. That triangle becomes part of a vast planetary network. This is not merely symbolic, it is energetic and very real. When we read a chart through relational geometry, triangles become a way of understanding possibilities, how energies may be synthesized for the greater good. Interpretation must evolve as consciousness evolves. The same sign, planetary ruler, aspect, or life circumstance may communicate different messages on a higher or lower turn of the spiral. Esoteric astrology suggests three interpretive tiers or lenses for understanding, each corresponding to a different stage on the path. First, we have the personality lens. Through the exoteric or personality lens, life is centered on personality concerns, relationships, family, work, security, identity, and so on. Spiritual interest is often motivated by personal aims, finding peace, being happy, living my best life. The tendency is to look outward for guidance, toward experts and collective opinion. This tier may be characterized by separative tendencies, criticism, and judgment toward those who do not hold the same view. Many people experience the world through this lens, and it's nothing to denigrate or disparage. It is a starting point. Much as we would not get angry at a toddler for not understanding complex math, so is the parallel or correspondence here. Through training in meditation, spiritual studies, and persistence on the path, awareness expands, intuition is awakened, and personality integration ensues, becoming an instrument through which the soul can work. Next, we have the soul lens. This esoteric or soul lens begins focusing when the old ways of the personality are no longer satisfying. This may be experienced as a deeper longing or a search for meaning that emerges gradually over time or suddenly through a crisis when the rug is pulled out from under us. Questions shift from what do I want to what is ethical? What is the right thing to do here? And how can I serve? This transition can be disorienting and at times lonely. Family, friends, and colleagues may not understand the change, the shift away from interests and activities that once seemed so important but no longer hold much meaning. The reorientation can be dizzying, like the in-between step on a ladder, stepping away from what was and up into the unknown. The challenges, crises, and little earthquakes, while sometimes jarring, are actually signposts of progress. This is why right companionship, groups oriented to service, meditation, and goodwill, like triangles, are key at this stage, providing a steadying field for the soul's impression to be intuitively recognized and trusted. At this stage, the esoteric ruler is most significant, pointing toward the energies that can harmonize the personality and soul purpose. Finally, the initiatory lens. Through the hierarchical or initiatory lens, identity is no longer centered in the personality or even the individual soul, but in the group life and group service. Here, the personal will yields to divine will, as in, thy will be done. Service is impersonal and steady, without drawing attention or seeking recognition. This lens is not about personal development, but the distribution and sharing of energy for the greater good. In sociology, we say the dyad is the most unstable of groups. All it takes is for one person to opt out, and you no longer have a group. Triads introduce a third element, possible tensions and coalitions, along with a powerful dynamic for change. Wherever two forces oppose, a third can reorient and reconcile. In relationships, self and other may clash until a shared purpose enters as the third point. Suddenly, you versus me becomes we. In decision-making, thought and feeling may compete until intuitive intelligence reframes one path forward. In spiritual practice, the heart and mind find synthesis when the will to good anchors creative intelligence and love wisdom in group service. Consciousness evolves through relationship, through the dynamic interplay of forces that stretch beyond good, bad, right, wrong, either or, black and white, separative thinking. The third point of the triangle reminds us that growth is not linear, it is relational. Triangles invite us to ask, what third point would bring balance, movement, and meaning to the two that are at a stalemate? Time of sharp polarities. Ideological, personal, cultural, and political divides that culminate in workplace conflict, family tensions, online discourse, marked by vitriol and division. Two forces pull in opposite directions. The triangle invites a higher question. What third point could harmonize these forces? What could reconcile this conflict or tension to act as a bridge rather than a barrier? Where might we find common ground? How might we reframe with empathy and non-judgment? Can we consider another's perspective without criticism? Can we find a shared purpose so that we are no longer in opposition, but on the same team, seeking the same positive outcome? The triangle offers a way to move from a reaction to response, from conflict to clarity, from personality preference to purposeful expression. It reveals the underlying pattern of energy and the next step towards synthesis. Through the esoteric lens, tensions may surface as the personality clings to familiar patterns, attachments, and ambitions, while the soul calls for greater meaning, purpose, and service. Here, the same patterns of polarity might reveal a deeper question. What is the soul asking of this situation? What value is being tested? What choice would harmonize the outer life with inner purpose? Intuitive insights emerge through meditation, study, reflection, and the evening review, the work of the Arcane School. Viewed in this way, the triangle can become a tool for reorientation and transformation. Through the hierarchical lens, polarity becomes the path of initiation, shifting the questions from personal meaning to group purpose. What action would best serve the greater good? What principle must be upheld? Here, the triangle becomes a field of responsibility, clarifying the work of the moment. In triangles, we see patterns of recurrent themes. Certain triangles become active during periods of crisis, aspiration, service, or initiation. These are experienced through recurring challenges, same theme, different players. Triangles reveal that growth is not random but patterned. Triangles demonstrate how tension can become clarity, how conflict can become strength, and how aspiration can become assistance. Triangles illuminate the subtle movements by which consciousness shifts from self-centeredness to alignment, and from alignment to group service. When our interpretive language includes triangles, esoteric astrology becomes something far more than a descriptive system. It becomes a geometry of consciousness. The three tiers of rulership remind us that interpretation meets us where we are. The exoteric lens supports integration, The esoteric lens reveals purpose. The hierarchical lens clarifies responsibility within the group life. Each tier is necessary, each has its tasks, and each prepares the way for the next. The three orders of triangles, constellation, planetary, and center, reveal the pathways through which energy flows, how forces are mediated, transformed, and expressed through human consciousness. They remind us that we live within a vast field of relationships and that our task is not to control these forces, but to cooperate with them wisely. And the developmental triangles, those recurring patterns of balance, choice, and initiation, of desire, conflict, and transformation, offer a practical key. They help us recognize the theme of the moment, the quality to understand, and the next right step on the path. Triangles help us recognize the energies at work in our own lives and in the lives of others, not to predict or control, but to support the unfolding of purpose. To work with these patterns is to recognize that every tension creates the teaching, contains the teaching, every crisis a point of emergence, every aspiration a call to serve. In this way, the science of triangles becomes a practical tool for transformation, from personality reaction toward soul alignment and purposeful service. Triangles remind us that evolution, whether personal or collective, is relational. One triangle, one choice, one act of alignment at a time. In closing, when we look to the heavens, we are not merely gazing skyward. We are pondering the vast mysteries of life and often trying to make sense of it all. As noted at the beginning of the talk, the true value of astrology may be in offering a shared symbolic language, communicating pathways of relationship, movement, synthesis, and understanding. Triangles work gives us a way to practice that symbolic language every day. By actively participating in a triangle, we become part of a living network of light and goodwill. Thank you for the opportunity to explore these ideas together. May our shared work in triangles continue to support the unfolding purpose of humanity.
Well, thank you so much, Carly. That was really, really it was full of so much you just wanted to stop and think about. And I'm sure it's been appreciated by everybody listening in. And they've probably got some questions for you now. I'm just wondering, though, if I could just ask you something. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned repeating patterns of crisis and the threshold pattern as well, which is possibly something we all experience, I would think, individually, and perhaps nations as well, and errors, even world errors, as we are having a new world order now, that sort of threshold pattern. So I just wondered if you could tell us, whatever angle you want to talk about, if you could just go into that a little bit before we start.
Sure. Yes, I will go in whatever direction our group takes us. But when we were talking about the threshold patterns, what really resonates to me is a recurring theme of a lot of times when people are, entering that esoteric phase, that tier, it is continuing to examine old patterns and the urge for something, greater meaning, a greater sense of service, moving in that direction, which means letting go of the old. And that can be, it's in many different ways. So it can be one of the things I touched on in the talk, former interests, things that would occupy your time, things that even work that you thought you would be doing forever. All of a sudden, it just doesn't hold the same meaning. What you thought it would be is not how it's turning out, and you're being drawn to something more, which is, that's how it initially resonates. But then it's often a way to make a difference, a way to serve, a way to consider the greater good. And you find yourself maybe at odds with, let's say this is something that's going on at work where you don't understand other people. You're thinking this is the right thing to do for the greater good. This is the right choice. And you're working with people whose orientation is this is what is best for me. And so finding that pull where you understand that, but you're no longer there and you're moving in this other direction. And it's just a lot, going back and forth. And when I look at the base of the triangle, oftentimes there are fundamental conflicts that are pulling you in one direction, the old versus this is the right thing to do. And that's the base, back and forth and back and forth. And for people who are familiar with astrology, I think of the dynamic as a T square, even though it's not necessarily an oppositional, an opposition that might show up in a chart or something, but it's opposing forces. And the way through is often transcendence. It's that T in the T square, the point upward. And that's how you reconcile the two. But it's a common pattern, and I think we see this over and over again in our lives and in the lives of others where they are just grappling with that, the old and the tradition and the habits. And I want to let go of that. I'm on that step. And then wanting to reach for that next one that is completely unknown and no one around you might be even considering that step. And it's just disorienting. So long answer. Sorry, I'm a little long-winded. It's
No,
better
that's
to
brilliant.
stick to
Thank you, Connie.
my scripts. Oh, we see a
I see
hand.
we've got a
Okay.
hand raised from Paul. Would you like to speak, Paul? Ask a question?
Hello.
Hi, Paul.
Uh,
Can you hear me?
um, yeah, can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you? Okay, fine. I'm thinking a lot about the old way of thinking duality. That in
Yes.
my mind it's like the olden way to see things, and
Mhm.
now the triad is a new beginning in a way. Is it right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting when we get into, I didn't know if anyone would want to bring up, a lot of times with what I teach in my day job is more of looking at micro conflicts that have to do with relationships and communication. When we get into more systemic issues within an organization or we look at between nations, it becomes a lot more complicated. And I don't know if anyone wants to go there. I did compile a few thoughts on that as well. It's very hard in this context to not think about what's happening globally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but I think it's something everybody can use every to
Yes,
think
on a
about
micro level,
the one
absolutely.
missing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else like to share some thoughts? There's one other raised hand. I'm sorry, my screen keeps jumping.
I think
It's
I'm
like,
on unmuted nonetheless. Can you hear me?
Hi, Maria Christina.
hi, who's
Hi,
that?
Carly. I was just
Maria Christina.
I
Oh,
was just
hello, hello.
talking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Could you indeed expand a little on your thoughts about raising it to a more mm, with a global
Macro.
situation? Yes, well,
Yes.
background or
Yes. So,
please.
so when we think about on a micro level, it is often keeping score. And on a macro level, when you think about dynamics between people and what leads to perceptions of inequity and it's not fair, it's often about scorekeeping. To move this to large scale, more global issues, you do have similar themes. Certainly the stakes and the structures are very different, but the underlying patterns are things like scorekeeping, historical grievances. At a macro level, this keeping score might translate into, long historical lists of harms, unresolved injustices, narratives about who started it, who suffered more, competing interpretations of past events. And then each side will hold this embedded narrative about what they endured, what they're owed, what the other side has failed to acknowledge. In personal relationships, this leads to resentment. On a global stage, it often leads to identity level narratives that are really hard to soften. That's the challenging part of it. And it's a kind of zero sum thinking in geopolitical or inter group conflicts. The comparison, so when we look at relationships, first of all, the comparison would be like when we're talking about micro dyads. So we're looking at, maybe workplace relationships, personal relationships. I contribute more than you, it's not fair, blah, blah. In geopolitical or intergroup conflicts, this comparison becomes the zero sum game thinking becomes if the other side gains, we lose. Their safety means our danger, their prosperity or recognition threatens ours. And it makes compromise really difficult because it feels like surrender. So, not allowing the other side to be is a threat to identity. And on a macro level, this can become existential fear, pressure to preserve cultural identity, narratives about survival, and fear that recognition of the other's needs might erase one's own legitimacy. And that's why negotiations are really difficult. I know I was watching over the weekend the UN humanitarian, it's not a director, but it's an agent, the agent in charge of that, talking about negotiation and how both sides need to come to the table. And one of the challenging parts of this is that the identity part of it feels non-negotiable. So middle ground is hard in large conflicts because when mediators like UN representatives call for negotiation, there are structural challenges that make the middle ground really difficult. So you have asymmetrical power or risk. One side might feel they have more to lose. The weaker side might feel exploitation. Stronger side might feel loss of control. You have internal factions. Large groups will contain not, unlike a couple or a dyad, you'll have moderates, hardliners, people with different priorities. So you're not negotiating with one unified person. That's on a micro level, which is what I teach, way easier than dealing with this. So you're negotiating with many voices competing internally, and that's the challenge. So you also have different definitions. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So I just wanted to get some more people in if we can.
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt you if you've got something more that's important to that conversation. I just wanted to point it out.
I'll summarize one little thing. So what helps in this situation, the heart of it, in a large scale conflict? The pathway out is similar but more complex. You have to acknowledge harm, of course, legitimize each side's basic needs, and then slowly build shared interests. So essentially what you do is you try to work on nested triangles and then that will create movement overall. So you slowly build shared interests instead of insisting on one, the collective macro triangle having a shared narrative. So I'll talk a little bit more. I think some of the hands I saw before were.
Yes. Thank you so much, Collie.
No
Robin
worries.
has had her hand up for quite some time.
Yes, Robin. And I think she wanted to know about that. So.
Oh, did she? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was Bart.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm speaking. Yeah. I definitely wanted to know about that, but I also, a friend and I were talking about our bucket list, and she would like to travel and do things, right? My bucket list is, when will all people love? That is my bucket list. And then I'm just wondering, is it in the stars for us? I mean, are we ever going to get over that mountain and see that beloved freedom land? Thank you.
Well, actually, that's a really great question that ties to what I was going to talk about in terms of, you know, nested triangles. Essentially, you're going to have people, when we look at my little, I love this, a house of cards. So if we have some triangles within that giant, that bigger triangle, if we have triads of, what you're talking about, expressing love, light, goodwill in a smaller triangle, then it moves into the second tier and becomes a larger triangle. We have nested triangles within the larger triangle, so they might dominate. I think that's a wonderful aspirational goal to move toward, thinking that the entire triangle is going to be reflecting that, maybe eventually, but we start with what we're doing right now, our triangles, and then radiating outward, maybe incorporating being a nested triangle, a larger triangle. I hope that helps. Just my thought.
Thanks, Colleen.
Yes.
Can we just, I think one more. Bart Cook has had his hand up quite often. Bart, please go ahead and ask Carly a question. Bart, can you hear us?
I can't quite unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Okay, sure.
Yes. I was just wondering how this relates more to astrology. Thinking that the trine in astrology versus the opposition is usually an easier aspect, and I love the idea that you set out saying the third point in the triangle is reactional. It's the compromise, the communicate, the co-work, cooperate, all of those co-words of the two together. So those are just some thoughts that I had.
Yes, I love what you, oh, go ahead, ask your question.
I was just going to say, astrologically, it's on a very much more hierarchical scale than the mundane. And of course, we live in the mundane world, but the other thing is more interesting.
Well, it is kind of interesting too when you talk about like trines, since you speak the language of of astrology. Trines in a chart are very easy dynamics. They're all in the same element. And when we look at triangles in another way, it is the what I'm talking about is actually, it does function a lot more along the lines of what a T-square does, where you're synthesizing two energies. And they don't, like I said, they don't necessarily need to be in opposition. It's just you're going in two directions and then there's a way through in a T-square. Whereas trine, it's like easy, you don't even need to like give much attention because the energy flows easily in a triangle or in a trine in that way.
Yep. When an opposition forms a triangle that's not necessarily involving a trine, it is still a triangle with information on the third point of how to resolve that opposition.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's wonderful talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, I'm sure, colleague, that speak for everybody. Say how professional and how lovely your talk was, and how it's really opened our minds to all sorts of different, I love angles of, polarities, moving to aspiration, to initiation, and it's just got so much in it that we can reflect upon. And thank you for all the energy that you put into it.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
We'll now go into our meditation, the energizing the planetary networks of triangles. We come together as a group unity on the mental plane. Identify as a soul with the world group functioning through 3 planetary centers, London, Geneva, and New York, as a triangle of light. Extend identification through the soul to the new group of world servers, to the hierarchy, and to the Christ, the transcendent point of synthesis at the center of every triangle, and to the triangle of energies standing behind the Christ. Identify the center Shambhala, the center of purpose and power. Recognize the synthesis of 3 streams of cosmic energy within Shambhala, where the will of God is known, using the dedication in the center of the will of God I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from his. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Visualize a network of lighted triangles underlying the entire outer world of physical life and events. See the network linking all triangle units and relating all points of light throughout the world. Relating the world of spiritual realities, the hierarchy, to the world of experience, humanity, and acting as a channel of distribution within humanity for spiritual energies pouring through the hierarchy. Transforming the planetary etheric vehicle to receive and circulate the energies of the soul and the triad: will, love, light. Realize that the energies of light, love, and the will to good, evoked by all triangle workers, pulsating through the planetary network of triangles, are having an inevitable effect within the three worlds, mental, emotional, and etheric, of human evolution, lifting human consciousness and helping to create the path of light for the feet of the Christ. Reflect on the purpose, function, and right development of the triangle's network as an hierarchical activity. Blended with the group, stand with positive intent as a station of radiant light within the network of light and goodwill. We sound the great invocation, directing the triple energies through the triangle's network and throughout the consciousness of humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. Oh. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to meeting up again next month on Monday, the 13th of April. And we'll be back to our normal time of 8 p.m. UK time and 9 p.m. or 2100 for European time. Thanks again to Carly and to all of you for joining this evening today. Goodbye.